Because
Sure.
most people, and this was very, very interesting, and you can look at on Wikipedia and check it out, but really about the Tea Act and how this whole corporate inclusion started way, way back when, and why actually this country became what it was, why the revolution happened, and what brought us to that Tea Party.
Sure. The great myth that we've all been taught is that the American Revolution was ignited by taxation without representation, but in fact that's not true. And the way to see that is to look at the timeline of events that transpired prior to the writing of the Declaration of Independence. The phrase "no taxation without representation" actually came from an act called the Stamp Act, which was passed in 1765, 11 years before the Declaration of Independence. The Stamp Act was a tax on all paper goods. Anything made of paper was taxed. The colonists resented that because they made their own paper. And that led to the Stamp Act riots, which caused a great alarm to the Parliament and the King in England, and they repealed the Stamp Act. What transpired afterwards, they passed a different set of laws called the Townshend Acts, where they decided they would tax anything imported into the colonies. The colonists weren't very wild about that, but they could understand and accept goods being taxed that they were importing. But what ignited the American Revolution was the Tea Act. The Tea Act, and if you know, most people, whenever if you ask them what about the Tea Act, what they know about it, they'll say, well, that was a tax. It actually wasn't. It was a tax waiver for one corporation to give them a monopoly on the tea trade, which was a very important commodity at the time. When that happened, the merchant class realized that, that act, by the way, was passed in 1773. The merchant class realized that they were being legislated out of business. Essentially, and the parallel then matches exactly what's going on today. The king was the majority shareholder of the East India Company, the company that was the corporation that was benefiting from that act. The minority shareholders were the politicians and judges, members of parliament. Well, the judges were not, of course, members of parliament, but at any rate, you get the gist. So the merchant class in the colonies realized that they needed to nip that in the bud. They saw that as feudalism disguised behind the veil of a fictitious entity called a corporation. Well, today we have the same problem. The word was not used back then, but I like to use the word, the king and the parliament were trying to Walmartize the tea trade to destroy individual commerce. And that's exactly what happens today when these big corporations like Walmart go into an area, they wipe out the individual commerce, and then the merchant class suddenly become greeters at Walmart. So this is the oppression. It's an economic oppression, and of course this corporate type control just permeates our culture. It affects everything: healthcare, commerce of all kinds. So it's corporatism that was the cause of the American Revolution. The recognition that using corporations to disguise tyranny and enslave people was not acceptable to the founding fathers, the merchant class, and that spawned the revolution. Today we have the same problem. The corporations, the consolidation of media, and all these other industries is, the way that corporations are oppressing us, and they do that through collaboration with politicians and judges. when the Declaration of Independence was written, well, let me go just discuss a little bit the timeline. The Tea Act was passed on May 10th of 1773. The merchant class, as soon as they got word of it, around June of 1773, by the time they floated this new law across the Atlantic Ocean, which functioned as a giant moat to protect the king and the parliament, the members of parliament. When they got word of it, they realized they had to do something. So over the next few months, they managed to figure out how to wake up the people. And that's the problem that many of us are asking ourselves. How do we wake up the people? And what can we do to fix the situation? Well, back then, the original 13 colonies encompassed a land area of 360,000 square miles. And the only way they could communicate back then was by word of mouth, on 2 feet or on horseback, and they could print, little booklets or pamphlets, that kind of thing. And they had to figure out what would be the most powerful way to wake up the people to stop the tyranny. That question really intrigued me. So after doing a lot of research, I finally figured out exactly what it was. And they talked to the people about getting rid of the tyrants, the government that was controlling them, and establishing a government where the people would be free and would be able to secure their freedom by their right to consent to any laws proposed to be enacted or enforced. In the Constitution, when it was written, that was omitted. And they omitted it in the First Amendment. So what we have actually been led to believe and brainwashed to believe that established our freedom and protected our freedom took it away.
Well, there's so much great information in your book, and you and I have had, long conversations, and I would love to go on and find out more, and maybe we will meet again soon and bring some more dialogue to them. But I wanted to open up this conversation. We welcome your comments. We love hearing from you. If you want to know more about this, you can go to www.TimeForANewTeaParty.com.
That's correct.
They can read more about this. They can get this booklet if they want. It's an easy read, very fast, but fascinating. And it pretty much tells not only about some of the stuff that you're saying, but like I said in the very beginning, so what's the solution? Have you got an answer?
Well, that's what I've done, is in identifying the problem and how our revolution, the American Revolution, was hijacked. The remedy is for us to compel our right to consent. So in the book, I give the background and how our freedom was actually sabotaged and subverted by the Constitution, and what we can do, how we can amend the Constitution, and we can peacefully, non-violently fix these problems and take back our country and take back control of this country so that we truly have government by the consent of the governed. And we all want to fix the problem.
Right.
Nobody wants to go out, and nobody wants chaos or bloodshed. But this government has way overstepped its boundaries. And it was a very clever scheme, and it's time that we correct the problems. And the book outlines exactly how we can go about doing that, and we can do it within one election cycle. Be sure to watch Part 3 to learn more about how our right to consent to the laws we live by is the key to waking up the people to take back our country. Send the link to your friends, and be sure to click the yellow subscribe button on your computer screen to see more in the future. Thanks.